Welcome to Municipals or Foes, at the crossroads of seriousness and silliness, a look at small town politics in rural Oklahoma. We're discussing if your municipality is really your friend or foe. I'm Lauren Fuller, along with my co host Mike Simlescu, and tonight we are visiting with two candidates for the upcoming election for Ward 2 of City Council. And our first guest is Clint Morrison. Clint, welcome to the show. We are
Welcome,
excited to
Clint.
kind of
Thank you for
probe you
having me.
and ask you some questions about where your stance is on things and see what some of your top priorities are. Tell us first a little bit about yourself, Clint. Introduce us. Tell us what you do, what got you interested in running for this position.
Well, first off, thank you again for having me on. Lauren, also congratulations to your position there at Southwestern. I
Thank
give
you.
so those that don't know, I went to pharmacy school at OU, and so there's two pharmacy schools in Oklahoma. There's one at OU, and like there's the other one in Southwestern. Out of nine pharmacists at Choctaw here at Durant, I was the only one that went to OU. So I always give them a hard time about that. But I mean, there's something about it. They're all super smart, so that must really say something about you too. Um, I grew up in Seminole, Oklahoma, so about an hour and a half north of here. My parents still live there. I graduated from Varnum, America. So we're the Varnum Whippets. I graduated with a big class for us. We had 20 in my graduating class. My sister had 13, and all of my aunts and uncles, mom, dad, all went there. So my dad's a truck driver, or was a truck driver, and my mom's a teacher. She was a librarian too. So she really instilled a love for reading for me. So that's one of my major hobbies is I love to read, still do. After graduated from Varnum, I went to OU in Norman. My first class after coming from Varnum, having 20, 30, 300 in the whole school, maybe we had 500 in the whole in my first class at OU, and I loved it. Wouldn't trade it for anything. At one point, I can remember when I got into pharmacy school, I was trying to figure out, what I'm going to do moving forward. I knew I wanted to work for Indian Health Service. Mom suggested, she's like, "What about Durant? We're Choctaw." She said, "What do you think about moving to Durant and working for the Choctaw Nation?" I said, "I don't know a soul that lives in Durant. There's no reason for me to ever go there. Why would I ever do that?" And lo and behold, I met my, soon to be wife at that point, Ashley Northcutt, and she's from Durant. Her family grew up here, still here. Um, and she was moving back to Durant actually to take over her family business. So her grandpa started Corner Drug, and then her dad had it, and then now Ashley has it. And it was either I needed to make a decision, either I'm going to follow her to Durant, Oklahoma, or I need to move on with my life, I guess. So I ponied up and I moved with Ashley, and it's been great ever since. So that was in 2008 when we moved to Durant, and I drove back and forth from here to Hugo for a few years, and then was able to get bound back here in Durant, and worked for Choctaw Nation since then. They've been great. Ashley and I have two young daughters. So Grace is my freshman, and then Kate, she's in fifth grade. And what little free time we have now with basketball for Grace, I still like to get out and we work out in the mornings. Like to lift weights and love to run, love to read. And then anytime I have free time, I usually like to try like something new. I actually used my GI Bill for my time and my service in the United States Public Health Service. I went back to Southwestern, from Southwestern. Yeah, that I had went back to Southeastern here in Durant, and got my MBA. Got that in Native American leadership, and just felt like, oh, that'd be fun to do, and it was a good learning experience for sure. Um, but that's a little bit about me.
Well, that sounds great. Now, so see, you've done all this. You've been here, what, 15 years now? More than that, actually. You said 2008,
Yeah, I
right?
think
So
I was thinking about
17
today.
years.
It's like 18 years. It's this might be the like even more than my childhood back home in Cinema. I think this is the
Yeah.
most I've ever lived in one spot.
So you got here probably. I got here in 2010. So you've been here just a little bit longer than we have. So you've done all this. You've been a member of the community. You're starting to. You enjoy living here. It's a good story. I think you have some. Also, I think on your wife's side, right? There's some. Not to get into long details, but some political involvement, right? At some point
Yeah.
in
So
local politics.
uh, great examples of giving back to the community. That's one of the reasons that I decided to throw my hat in the ring, I guess you want to say. So Ashley's dad was mayor of Durant for a while, and from what I understand, like he actually helped create Lake Durant because when we needed another water source. And then Joyce, Ashley's mom, was on city council, and she is very involved in a lot of things, more so than me. I think she's like a superwoman for sure. Her and Ashley's brother, Craig, even like took us into their home. So we did have a place to live there for a while after we sold the house. So we lived with him for a while. I was worried maybe that'd be the end of the marriage. And that was the best time of my
Yeah.
life, actually, living with Joyce, believe it or not. And wouldn't trade that for the world. And they've been some of my biggest supporters for sure. Joyce is still super involved, like as a former teacher with the school. She's on the school board now. And I learn a lot from her for sure. And if I probably argue with her, like behind Craig, probably argue with her the most, but she definitely is a great example of what leadership can be, and something that I definitely strive for.
Well, having that background, Clint, have they given you any forewarning of what to expect in this role?
Yeah. It's funny is when, some people asked, would I be interested in doing it? My first thought was no. I had to
It
really,
always should be.
yeah, yes. I
Right.
don't know if to thank you or not for taking this other position, but no, in all seriousness, not. I was very hesitant to go into it because I've seen other people, do it. I think it's a hard job and it can be very involved, or it should be at the very least. It's not something to take lightly. So obviously, I think Joyce is one of the first people that I talked to for advice and, what do you think about this? And if she thought I was an idiot, she would definitely tell me. So at first she was
Brother-in-laws
like,
are good at that.
yeah, yeah. I don't know if you like just know it would be a lot. And she's like, I think you could do it. You're used to doing like, with the pharmacy, for instance, taking a lot of information in and trying to make a good decision from that. And I reached out. Chad Hitchcock was another one that I called, and just to see like, hey, what do you think about this? And like, hey, would you do that again? And he had nothing but good things to say. And I think we do have a lot of great members on the board, right? On the board, on the council right now, and I think that's another positive that it made me want to say, yes, let's try this. I want to keep things moving forward, I guess. I think things are moving in the right direction. I want to keep it that way.
So,
I
what
think
do you
that's a
think are
good
some top
perspective.
issues that you hear about? Because I saw you were walking or you were knocking doors over the weekend. I saw on your Facebook. What are some of the
Yeah.
things that you feel like some top issues you heard from residents and kind of how you would address them?
Well, this might be a shocker to you and everyone else listening, but apparently our roads and are in need of a little repair here in Durant. That was news to me. But no, of course that's what the main one that people will always talk about. But I think obviously infrastructure is more than that. So we also Joyce was always going to stay on me for that. She was like, you can drive on a dirt road if you need to, but you need to be able to flush your toilet. I want to be able to do that. So obviously your water and your sewer are things that also need to be aware of. But another one I even thought about was, IT infrastructure. Obviously, that's another big one these days that we need to be sure that we don't neglect that. Those are some of the big ones. Um, and as far as how to deal with that, I definitely I keep telling people when I was talking to them, I am far from an expert in everything, and I will never claim to be the smartest in the room or anything like that. But I like to surround myself with smart people at work, so it makes me look a lot better, and I give the credit to them. Um, so I look around and see what are these other towns doing, for instance. And one of my pharmacists was on the city council at Denison, and I lean on him a lot to give me some advice and give me some examples because I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel here. Um, but as far as like we were maybe kind of I was talking to some people earlier about this, like it's not always about do we need to cut back here or we're spending too much here, but sometimes it's going to be we need to increase revenue. I think a lot of people don't always understand, and I'll include myself in that, about how the city of Durant is funded. Some people think, well, I pay a lot of property taxes. I was like, well, guess what? That's not where the city of Durant gets that money from. It's your sales tax dollars and things like that. And everyone has been super nice when I was out there and that, walking the neighborhoods. And that's kind of my goal for, from here on out is continue to do that, getting out there and talking to people, but not only so I can hear relate these issues, but also to kind of, I guess, maybe educate myself, but educate the public as well about we can't do this alone. The roads aren't going to fix themselves overnight. And I don't think everyone is always aware of things like the new Main Street project, for instance, and they may not understand like how much a mile of road is. I would be willing to bet that if you think about it, there's probably maybe over 100 miles of road in Durant, and by the time you consider all the side streets. And I bet if we probably added it all together of how much it would replace every single road, and then by the time you get done, you probably need to restart the maintenance from the start. I think if people were kind of aware of those things and probably looked and saw that, well, the city's direct budget is 20 something million. It's actually pretty impressive that you guys have done as much as you have. So kudos to you on that. But as far as some other little things that I think would be interesting, in Denison, for instance, I'll go back to that. They had an app for the phone that you're able to, if you're having some city issues, communicate that, but then also maybe be able to communicate back with the public through the app. And it would be nice. I'm a big data person in the pharmacy. I always would like to be able to look at numbers to make a rational decision. And so if I had something like an app that can say, oh my gosh, we have 9,000 potholes on this one street. Yeah, I knew it was bad, but I didn't realize how much. And just um, to help you make those decisions. I think obviously, yeah, there's some issues, but I think a lot of people were actually super positive, super positive. They're like me; they love living here. They do.
Yeah,
That's
that's
amazing. They were
definitely,
positive. I'm happy for that
yeah.
because I had a little bit of a different experience when I was knocking doors. They were nice, but they weren't shy to let me know what things needed to change. But that's good. Hey, that may be a sign that we're doing a better job. So that's good. I'll take that as a
That's
positive.
right. No,
Uh,
there was maybe a few, sure, but that's going to be expected
there's
for
going to
anyone.
be
I was
right, and that's
overall was very very positive.
okay.
That's word two for you. That's a good word.
That's
I'm not going to
word
be
two.
biased. It's fine. Well, Clint, you have got some great ideas and great things kind of moving forward. And one of the things Mike and I know is once you get in and you learn all of this stuff, it changes your perspective completely. And sometimes, like you said, it is about just communicating with the public as to where we are at on a lot of those issues. It's not that they're being ignored or neglected as much as it is figuring out the priorities, because as we know here in Durant, there is a lot of things to be taken care of. And what Mike and I have found is there's just been a lot of things that got kind of kicked down the road. And now there are just so many of those things that sometimes it's prioritizing those. And more than that is, I mean, no, you can't do them all, but it's coming in agreement with some of the other city council members, because you don't get to make those decisions by yourself. And it's really easy to tell people, this is what I want to do. And then you go talk to the other four people and they're like, no,
Yeah.
that's not what we want to do. And so what do you think you are going to approach kind of getting to know the other council members so that you guys are on the same page? Because I know for us, it was about being on the same page a whole lot.
I think it's right off the bat. Like, I don't think that I like to, like, I guess, come in and learn a little bit. I don't want to come in and like say, hey, this, you're doing this. You need to change this, change that. Um, I need to probably learn a lot for myself before I start to make any suggestions. That's for sure. But I feel like one of the, I guess, attributes I do pretty well at is usually building relationships with people. For whatever reason, I guess I'm okay at that. I'm usually like the one to, I guess, obviously being the manager there at the pharmacy, obviously I get to handle a lot of the complaints. I get to some of the positives for sure, but I also get to handle some of that. And so being able to come to some common ground usually is important. And that's one way to handle not only those complaints and things like that, but building a relationship with the people I'm going to be working with to move things forward. And I think that goes beyond just the city council. Obviously, you have to work with those other four, right? Working with the city manager. So we are on some kind of shared vision, working to a common goal. But then we also need to be good partners with the school system here in Durant. Also, everyone knows Choctaw Nation is here. I obviously work for Choctaw Nation. I am Choctaw, and I want to be great partners with them too. I think everyone moving forward. I think I heard Chief say one time, and he's not probably didn't invent the phrase, obviously, but yeah, a rising tide raises all ships, and that's the goal of what we want for here, right? We all want to do well and have our community do well.
I say that a lot too, by the way, is just that.
Well, you're a smart person. That's why.
But I think it's a good philosophy, as long as there's some, because there's gonna be some disagreements, but hopefully, I think one of the big things is we can't take them personally, because that's hard sometimes, especially when there's complicated. Everybody has egos, and that's kind of how it is. But I think that's one thing that I think, that was hard, because I remember when I can't remember who it was. I think it was Charles McCall when we went up there to that OML meeting. He was like, "Hey, one thing I would recommend," which I'm not 100% sure he didn't take any of those votes personally, but he said, don't take them personally, move on to the next thing, and then, try to make the best of it. So I think that's probably a good advice. And I think, sometimes there could be a little bit of heatedness, though. I feel like I think it's a good group, and I think the temperature is a lot lower than when we first started. So I think that gives any of y'all that are coming in help. Now, obviously, a little bit of excitement last night, but usually it's been pretty boring in there. But I think and unexpected stuff does happen. But usually, I think you're right about that. I think having at least a common goal, I think, is important when you go into this.
Yeah, I think that I'll be honest, I don't know where exactly we're at with, like, the Project 2040 for Durant. I was kind of reading through some of that the other day, but I think, yeah, if we have some kind of long range goal that we would all could agree upon, and then how we get there may differ. I guess I'm one that I don't mind if I'm wrong. Okay, let's. I keep an open mind. I get proved wrong at work. I'll come up with an idea. Maybe it's dumb. Let's try it. But I'm open to, like, other suggestions for sure. So I don't think all the votes don't have to be unanimous. I think if,
Sure.
like, sometimes if you keep an open mind, and I ask a lot of questions, so I'll try to keep them, moving forward for the meeting's sake, I guess, if I'm on there. But I like to ask a lot of questions, 'cause I like to, make sure I understand and make sure I'm making good decision on those things.
The nice thing about y'all coming on this in February is we're almost into budget season. So
Mm,
budget season is always fun, because you get to learn a lot about a lot of things in a short period of time. And it's the first year is terrible, because there's so many things, and then the second year is not so bad, because you had some time to prep. You
mhm.
kind of have a handle on it. So that's a good that'll be a good time to learn a lot in a short time for y'all. But at least the rest of us have been there, so it's a little bit easier as we go forward there. Tell me, um, like, if there was one thing that you would like to attain on city council during your tenure or
Mhm.
during your term, what would it be? What are your thoughts on that? Like, what would you, if you had, like, it could be, I guess, it could be pie in the sky, but maybe something a little bit more, I don't know, practical or more attainable. What would be one thing that you feel like, hey, I want to, after my 4 years, or really 3 years, I guess, because Lauren's terms is only 3 years left. Like, what is one thing, like, hey, man, I want at least to get this done? What would you feel like that would be?
So I'm gonna give you a few different answers. I'm gonna, like, run with it. I guess the true
That's fine.
political way of answer. So, I guess, like, big picture, I would say I would love for Durant to be obviously in a better place than when started to where I left it. I want it to be moving forward. In my mind, and you can tell me if I'm wrong on this, but I like to think that, maybe right now we're somewhat of in a reactionary, spot. Like, we're trying to figure out, okay, great. This put out this fire over here. Let's figure out how we're going to pay for this. Let's figure out how we're going to pay for this, moving from one thing to another. I would love to be in a spot. I know it's pie in the sky, maybe in 3 years, right? But, like, if we're going to be able to be proactive in things. Oh man, we have all this extra money now. Now we're going to build an extra library. We're going to go build. One thing I would love to have a lot more running trails. So I run a lot, and so I run on these streets of Durant. It's not like I'm running on the sidewalk. I'm running down the streets of Durant, right?
Me too, right?
So,
I'm there
so
with you, running
yeah,
with
I
you.
mean, yeah,
Dangerous.
A lot slower
yeah,
though.
yeah. It's the we do those 5Ks, and, like, we think of, like, you talk about growth. This gets a little on the tangent right there. I've loved participating in Colton's run and everything, and thinking how far that has come from the start. Probably one of the biggest 5Ks that I know around. And that shows you what this community can do. We will come back and support a cause. Um, though we all want it to be better. Um, I think it's going to require growth, and that comes from that sales tax revenue. So that's going to be bringing in big businesses, a long time, alongside of still supporting the small businesses that have been in this community for years. I want to do both.
All right. mean,
answer.
we'll take it. Well, Clint, do you have any questions for us as far as what to expect or curiosities about what the position holds?
Gosh, I would say one thing, like what's one piece of advice might be one thing, but then also like if you want to maybe even say that, what's one of your favorite memories from being on the board so far?
Memories. Well, I'm going to say that's towards me because since I'm not there anymore. But some of my favorite memories always had to do when we all five got to get together and work on things. And we will have times where we've got, budget meetings that are technically open, but nobody comes to them. And we'd all get to sit around and discuss what's happening in the city. And I always felt like those were such good growth moments for us because the five of us did not get to sit down together unless it was an official meeting. And so for us to be able to bond and have those moments to really understand each other is important. What most people don't realize is we are a team, whether you like to think of it or not, and teams need to be able to function. And there are steps that go along with that. And you've got to kind of get through this initial rough patch where you don't understand each other. And then you eventually get to this point where you start to see where everybody comes from and value their unique opinions. And it takes time to get to know each other like that. So when we can't sit down together and have those bonding times, it makes it challenging for us to really be a unified team and really perform the way a city council needs to. So the more times we got to have those budget meetings, or we had a little retreat where we got to talk about the goals and aspirations that we wanted for the city. Those were some of my favorite times because we got to get to know each other and we got to become more unified in how we approached the city and what it is that we were working towards. And so I know those are things that you will get to experience one day potentially. And so they're valuable. I mean, like I said, you have to take everything with a grain of salt. Everybody has their opinion. And there were definitely times where you had opinions creep in that kind of tainted everybody's perspective. And you all had to stand back and go, hang on a second. We gotta look at this for what it is and try to not be influenced, but to make the wisest decision for the future of Durant. And like we said, stop kicking stuff down the road. We got to take care of business so that we can actually start to make progress instead of just pushing things off so that it becomes a bigger problem. So that's my favorite memory.
Good answer.
I don't have any memories yet. I'm still on this, but I think developing those relationships, not necessarily just with the council members, but I also think with the public at large, and also with our. I've enjoyed talking with our state representatives because we need to have a good working relationship, not only with our colleagues here at the city, but also with our representatives and senators at the state level, and even at the federal level. Like, we try to have a good relationship with Josh Burkeen and with the the senators. They obviously we don't talk to them very often, or that go to Washington, but we do talk to Cody Maynard and David Bullard, and we definitely need their help as well. So we do try to do those things as well. So I do appreciate those relationships, and just kind of I like the to try to get things done. I enjoy that part of it where we talk. It doesn't always work, but where we get and have meetings and talk to other people and try to work together, do that. I like building those relationships. I think that's really important. It's one of the things that we missed. I got a question for you though. So we weren't going to talk about this, but since this turned out unexpectedly over the last month or so, and I know you were at the meeting last night, and I thought to myself, man, Clint's here at the most exciting meeting we've ever had. I don't know if I'll call it very exciting, but it was definitely different. It was an experience. And I think it's interesting when local politics becomes sort of unexpected. A lot of people, usually there's not that many people there. It's the city workers. It's, hey, we're celebrating something. There's a few people there talking about, permits or housing or what is that? Not redistricting, rezoning.
Rezoning,
but then it's like, there's this rumor been going around about a potential ICE detention center over by Choctaw Nation, over at the old Big Lots Distribution Center. That kind of got a little bit of confusion based on what our agenda said. Our agenda made it sound like potentially we're going to vote on some type of
Yeah.
detention facility. Well, really, it was an ordinance to kind of sort of regulate some of those things, because we don't really have an ordinance in our city ordinance code or whatever it is that talks about prisons, detention centers, any of that stuff. So we put in the point of that meeting was to put an ordinance in place to potentially, have some influence or discussion or a seat at the table if that is something that's going to come to pass. We, like I said, from the city, nobody's presented us with any plans or anything. So I think that's really important to say, because I think some of the people there thought we were passing some type of detention center all of a sudden, out of the blue. So, but anyway, I want to get your comments on that, see what your thoughts are, because I mean that they're going to ask you about this one, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, 100%. In fact, somebody asked me on Facebook today, and somebody I got several comments like during the meeting, after the meeting, and some phone calls, and they were like, "Are you sure you want to do this?" kind of a thing.
I think I
I
said that
chuck,
to you too when I saw you there.
yeah, I chuckle about that. So I've got a quote up here in my office. It's from Teddy Roosevelt about the man in the arena kind of a thing, and there's plenty of critics and things like that that want to be negative and all this stuff, and but really, like, it's about the person that's actually out there doing, trying, make a difference, right? Um, and I was chuckling about that to several people. I get the joke, right? Who would want to sign up for that? But I also think that, like, if I didn't do this, who am I leaving it to? Who else is going to have to step up to the plate? Not just now, but even years down the road. So I feel like that we've made some significant strides here in Durant, but also feel like that things can backslide pretty quick if we don't keep an eye on that, and if we're not vigilant on things like this supposed ICE detention center, and being forward thinking and think, okay, what can we do to maybe get in front of that? I don't know if you could totally stop the federal government, who knows, but that's we're trying. At the very least, we're trying, and I don't think anyone necessarily was like super excited about the possibility of that coming there. And just for like reference, like I work right next to that. I can throw a rock and hit that
Right.
building, for instance. um and there, we don't have to get in all the issues as far as like the ramifications if something like that were to come in tonight. But I just said, like, I echoed a lot of the same concerns that a lot of people have of having that right here in our backyard. And I agree with Chalk Foundation. I just don't feel like this is the right spot for that either. um but I would say, it also taught me last night that um sometimes, like, the legal language can be a little confusing to people. I get that. And so I wrote down to myself in my notes was that I need to be sure that, to take from that is I need to be out there in the public as much as I can. I enjoyed getting out and knocking doors. I don't know if that means continue to do that necessarily going forward, but it's at least getting out there as much as I can in my free time to make myself available to talk to people, but also to kind of explain to them what's going on. Because last night, I think there were a lot of people with good intentions and things like that that um, maybe they just kind of misunderstood what was happening. I think that they were probably like, if they understood it right off the bat, they wouldn't been so upset. Maybe it would have saved a lot of angst for a lot of people. Um, but that being said, I think I would agree. I would echo what the council did. I think it was a good job.
All right. That sounds good to me. Let's see. What else you want to talk about? Let's see. Okay. Why should a voter who is undecided or skeptical give you their vote?
That's a great question. Well, hopefully I can win over my winning personality, I guess. But the thing is, Ashley and I have been here for, like we said, about 18 years. We're invested in this community at this point. There's nowhere else that we plan on going anytime soon. And I think I wrote down a few things as far as, like, obviously Ash and I've been very blessed. We've gotten a lot of support, not only with this campaign, for instance, but just in our every day-to-day life. For those that don't know, like, my little one Kate, she is she's special needs. So she participates in Special Olympics, and I couldn't ask for a better school system that has taken care of her, from day one. and that goes like not only like in like her medical care from Choctaw Nation to the school system, and like Kate's done so many things I didn't think were possible. And then last year I got to participate in like the polar plunge for the Special Olympics, and I've not to toot my own horn, but I've won different awards before, but that golden plunger for #1 fundraiser for that was probably my most favorite thing that I've ever got. And to see that look on her face and all the other athletes. Again, I'm going off on a tangent here for a second, but if you ever get a chance to participate in like or watch Special Olympics, I mean, you won't be disappointed. There's nothing that's more emotional than seeing those kids feel so happy about themselves. But back on to the point of the topic here. Um, Not only do I have experience with a private personal private business like that here in town, but I've had experience with Choctaw Nation as far as like running a pretty decent size budget, and then also working with a large staff. And I think all those, along with just being a pharmacist in general, of taking a large amount of information, trying to learn as much as you can, and make an educated decision. I think make a good. I would think a lot of probably people would say would make good qualities for someone to be on city council.
Well, I think those are great answers, Clint. And this is an exciting race. I mean, we've got some amazing candidates that are running for this seat. So it makes me excited that people are excited about being a part of what's happening in the city and wanting to ensure that it continues to move forward. And so we're looking forward to watch how this race unfolds, and we wish you all the best of luck. And we know it's a lot of work and it's a lot of time, and we are hopeful for you. So thank you for being on and being able to communicate with our listeners what it is that you're all about and what it is you stand for. And we know that this race is going to change your life whether you win or not.
So Clint, February 10th, election day, right? How can they get a hold of you if you want to talk to them, if they want to see your campaign materials, Facebook? How do we get a hold of you?
I'm on Facebook, Clint Morrison. Look me up on there. I've got my own personal page. You can add me on there, but then also we've got just a campaign page, citizens for Clint Morrison. And then I'm actually going to have a little meet and greet on, depending on when people are going to watch this or listen to this, but it's going to be on the 15th down at Corner Drug on Main Street. We're going to do that tomorrow, actually. So on Thursday, we're going to do that from 5 to 6:30. I'm going to be set up there. If you can't make it out, be sure to message me. I'll be glad to get with you. And then if you're ever out at Choctaw, that's the one thing about being pharmacist. We can't hide. We're right there in the public. I can't be like these doctors over here that can hide behind their nurse or anything. Like I was giving you a hard time. I know that's not you or anything. I know nothing but great doctors that I work with too. I always think they're the best. But the pharmacists are usually easily accessible.
Oh, just you wait. They'll pop up. They'll be like, hey, is he back there? I need to talk to him.
So please come out. And I guess I would probably just also end with this is, I wrote down to myself, let's kind of remember why we're doing this. And probably you guys would probably echo the same thing, or anyone else that was hopefully running that, not only for the people that are here now, but like my kids. That's what I always think about. Like, oh my gosh, I want Durant to be a place that Grace and Kate want to live at, when they get older and they want to stay here, hopefully. And, it just continues to grow and do good things.
Awesome. Well, Clint, thank you for being here. We appreciate your time. We know it's valuable. Thank you for coming on, and good luck.
Good luck,
Thank
Clint.
you very
Have
much.
a good night.
Thank y'all. Y'all have a good one too.